Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of a brand new podcast, Perusing the Panels. I'm your host, EmAr Comics, that's EmAr Comics, short for Emerald Archer, and the point of this podcast is to take a deep dive into the world beyond the pages. Alright, so real talk, what does that mean? Basically, this podcast is for talking about all things comic book, whether that be the books themselves, movies, video games, TV shows, all of that is fair game here. I also want to have a revolving door of co-hosts, basically people I can bring in to talk about subjects I'm not as well versed in, like different characters or storylines that I'm not really, jazzed about, stuff like that. So I want to bring in different co-hosts to talk about that kind of stuff. But I also want to do a couple of solo episodes, like I'm doing right now. So basically, this podcast, if you're into comic books, it's perfect for you. It's just having a lot of fun talking about stuff that we all care about. And if you're not into comics, congratulations, this podcast is also for you because this first episode is called How to Get Into Comics. I know getting into comics as a medium can be kind of scary and a little bit intimidating because, you walk into a comic shop and there's all these characters, all these issues, and, Batman's had a million comics over the years, so where do you start? This is for you. So the first thing I want to talk about is this notion that comic book fans are inherently gatekeepers who kind of sneer at newcomers. That could not be further from the truth. This is perpetuated a lot by The Simpsons with comic book guy. But a lot of comic book fans that I talk to are very welcoming of newcomers and want to see people get into the books that they enjoy. So don't be afraid to be a newcomer. You can ask questions, you can not know things, and nobody's going to judge you for that. We've all been where you were. So that's the first thing, is there is nothing wrong with being a newcomer to comics. So, with that out of the way, where do you start? The first thing I always recommend is find a character you like. And I know that sounds super simple, everyone thinks about that, but a lot of people when they're oh, how do I get into comic books? Well, you don't get into comic books. You read a character that you enjoy, their story happens to be told through a comic book, and from there you can find other characters that you enjoy. That's the thing. You don't get into comics, you get into the characters. That's what I've always said. Comic books are no different than reading a regular book. It's a story about characters, and if you're not engaged in the characters, then you're not engaged in the medium. So that's the thing. You don't get into comics, you get into characters. So find one that you care about. Whether that be you liked the newest Blue Beetle movie, or in Young Justice you thought Roy Harper was the coolest character. All of that doesn't really matter how you get into them. Find a character you like. That's the big thing. You don't get into comics, you get into the characters. So, you found a character that you like. Awesome! Now what? A good place to start is an omnibus collection. Omnibuses are a full storyline featuring that character, whether that's their full run or a full story arc. Omnibuses are a great way to start because it has the full story from start to finish right there for you. I love collecting omnibuses. That's how I usually read new comics that I haven't gotten into. I usually start with omnibus collections. But maybe you don't want to read an omnibus. Maybe you don't want to commit the full $30 to a full book. Maybe you do want to go issue by issue. Well, let me go ahead and tell you, always start at number 1. Number 1 is always going to be the best way to start a new issue because you don't jump into a story in the middle of it. You don't jump in to Harry Potter in the middle of Goblet of Fire. No, you have to start at the beginning. But everyone's oh, well, if I start a new run, I have to know what happened in the run before, or the run that happened in the 80s that this one references. Any good writer who's writing a current storyline for that character will always tell you exactly what you need to know for that story to make sense. Any good writer will include all of the information that you need to understand the current storyline. You don't need to know everything about the character's history to understand any of their storylines. So, omnibuses are a good way to start, or if you're looking for the recent runs, always start at number 1. Now, where do you find these things? Because, you can't just go into the gas station and say, hey, I'm looking for Iron Man Demon in a Bottle. They'll call you crazy and tell you to get out. I know, I've been there. Your local comic book shop is always the best way to start. I know not everybody has one, but hear me out first. If you have a local comic shop, always start there. Comic book shops are the heart and soul of the community. It's where everybody can go and share their interests with whatever the character that they're interested in. You all come together. You guys get to shop in a place that you are all safe and comfortable in. It's awesome. Comic book shops rock. And the employees there especially. If you go in there and you tell an employee, hey, I'm trying to get into Iron Man, they'll help you out. Because like I said, most of the comic book community are not gatekeepers. Most of them are wanting new readers to come in, especially if they run a comic shop. So I'm telling you, comic book shops are the best place to go for this kind of stuff. But Maybe you don't have one near you, and that's completely fine too. If you don't have one near you, any good bookstore nowadays should have comic books, especially after the explosion of the MCU and the light fireworks of the DCEU. Everybody knows comics are the way to go now, so a lot of bookstores will carry entire sections of graphic novels. Now, granted, if you go to a bookstore, you're not usually going to find, like, the current run or any single issue prints. You're probably going to find omnibuses. So if you're looking for single issue runs, you're going to want to start at comic book shops, or, just wait for the full omnibus and then read that. If you don't have a bookstore near you, another great place, and I feel like nobody ever talks about this, the library. My library has a ton of comic books, and I even talked to my librarian about it. I asked how many people usually come in here looking for comic books. Barely any of them, unless they're like the little kids or the graphic novels that are in the kids section. But they have so many really good runs. Batman Nightfall, the storyline that inspired The Dark Knight Rises, where Bane, breaks his back. That storyline is at my local library. And according to the stamps on the inside, I was like the only person to check that book out in 5 years. So libraries are an amazing resource, and they're completely free. You just go in there, get a library card, check out a run that you think looks cool from there. See if most library catalogs are digital, so you can look up what characters they have there. Find one you're interested in, start at your local library. Oh, and just in general, support libraries, man. Libraries are cool. I don't know why people have such weird grievances against the library. How do you hate a library? Libraries are cool. So basically, if you can, support your local comic shop. Find a good, a Barnes & Noble or Half Price Books, and your local library. But EmAr, you might be saying, I don't want to read physically. I want it on my phone or my tablet so I can just carry it around wherever I go. That's also completely valid. If you want to read books digitally, I would recommend Marvel Unlimited and DC Infinite. Those are the two apps that both Marvel and DC run. It's about $10. It's under $10 a month each for both of those. And whenever you subscribe to their subscription service, you get access to their entire catalog of almost every single book that the two have put out since their inception. Conception, yeah. Inception is, yeah, okay. Basically, they have their entire catalog all digitally archived right there for you. It's like $7 a month for both of them. They're fantastic services. But if you don't want to commit to the full thing of I don't want to spend that much money on all of the catalog, I might not read everything in there, that's completely fine. Comixology, Amazon Kindle, I think it's called Nook, I think that's Barnes & Noble's thing. Those all have single purchases, where it's basically you go in there, you find the specific book you're looking for, you buy that, boom, you own it digitally. So you're not getting the full catalog, but it might be cheaper in the long run. So you're not paying $7 a month, you pay a one-time purchase for the book that you want, and you have it there. So basically, if you want a subscription service where you have access to the entire catalog, that would be Marvel Unlimited or DC Infinite. If you just want specific books, you're going to look for Comixology, Nook, and Amazon Kindle. Basically, those are really good resources if you want to buy all that stuff. But that's the other thing that I want to bring up, kind of my final point. This is the big thing. You have to understand whenever you go into comics, and this is something that I've had to deal with a lot. I know a lot of people try and get it behind. You're not going to know everything. You're never going to know everything about it. And that's something that you just kind of have to live with. For me, especially, I've read every single run that Green Arrow has ever had. And I mean that. There's I think it's 8 runs in total. I've read every single one. And I still don't know everything about Green Arrow. There are just it's so much to take in. There is so much information. You're not going to know everything, but you don't need to know everything. Because like I said earlier, any good writer is going to tell you what you need to know to understand that current storyline. So basically, you're not going to know everything, but you're going to pick things up along the way. And especially, that's also the beauty of going back to read an older... Oh my god, I need water. Hold on. That's the thing about going back to read an older storyline, is you pick up on a lot of the nuances that you might have missed the first time you read it because you weren't as integrated with the character. So you're not going to know everything, but you are going to pick things up on the way. And if you want to broaden your horizons with that character, okay, I'm a really big Green Arrow fan, but what do I do now? I don't want to just read Green Arrow. Look for team-based books. Team-up books are an excellent way to get into new characters, because that's the point of the team. A lot of people... That's my thing. Everyone makes their own version of oh, this is who I want in the Justice League. This is who I want in the Avengers. Well, you need some of your lesser known characters on there because the whole point of a team book is so that you bring in the Captain America fan and you make them an Iron Man fan. You bring in the Batman and Superman fans and you introduce them to Green Arrow. You know, that's the point of these team-based books. For example, like a personal little anecdote, I recently got the Marvel Midnight Suns game, which is fantastic, by the way. It's kind of an XCOM fighter where it's like a strategy game. Like you get like a deck of cards, you only have so many moves at a time. It's a fun game. And it introduced me to one of my favorite Marvel characters of all time. Now, her name is Ilyana Rasputin. She goes by Magic. She is a fantastic character, and I never would have known about her if they didn't put her on a team with characters I did care about, like Blade and Doctor Strange and Iron Man. And because I'm a Midnight Suns fan now, like I've read like their most recent run, they're really cool. That's a little promo. Go read Midnight Suns. They're awesome. But that's the other great thing about these comic books is each story. A lot of stories are basically backdoor pilots. Like, if you're reading a Captain America comic and Iron Man shows up halfway through, then, like, yeah, you're going to get interested in Iron Man. And that it's a good way to find new characters is just read team-based books. You know, find a team that your favorite character's on, read their book, and see who else interests you. Basically, that's the thing about comic books. It's about broadening your horizon. You know, look for characters that you're interested in, find storylines that you think sound interesting, read that omnibus, pick up that issue _1, talk to your local comic book shop about where you want to start. Comic books are a beautiful thing, and they're so easy to get into. It's just intimidating. But I really hope that this episode helped some people out. This one's kind of a shorter one because this is like my first episode, and it's solo. I think going forward in the future for the solo episodes, I'm going to do more scripted stuff, where I know my big plan is to walk you through the history of the Comics Code Authority. That one I think is going to be a cool episode. I want to do a solo one talking about the history of Black Canary and the Green Arrow's relationship, because like I said, I've read every single run that Green Arrow has ever had. So I want to talk about that. I'll probably do some Batman related episodes. Probably talk about, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff to talk about with comic books. So I really hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. It's a little rough around the edges. I know. I'm getting used to it. You guys are getting used to me. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. If you have any feedback, please let me know. You can find me on Twitter at EmAr Comics. That's at EmAr Comics. So if you guys have any feedback, please let me know about that. You know, I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. It's, like I said, a little rough around the edges, but, you know, baby steps, we're getting there. And thank you for listening to me ramble. All right, I'll see you guys next time.